All right. Hi, friends. If you're here for the replay, we'll get started in just a minute. Same with those of you who are here live. We'll be started in just a minute. Thanks. Hey, friends. For those who are here, we'll get going in just a minute. Thank you for coming and hanging out today. All right, friends. David here. Looks like it is time to start. So I'm not going to waste anybody's time because I'm all about starting on time. I hope you guys are good today. I know so far, we've just got a couple of you guys in here. Truth be told, we've actually been doing these a little bit more than a year now. And I remember last year that the Christmas season webinar was a little slower. And of course, this year it's 2020. And when it comes to live events, some are happening, but a lot are not. And so I get that. But great to have you guys here. How you guys doing today? Let me know in the chat. I see a couple of you guys in here, and hopefully a couple more will trickle in. I find on these usually a couple extra people trickle in as we get going. But I want to get started here talking about the lightShark today. Would love to know as we start actually from you guys. Okay, Hector's here. Hey, Hector. Awesome to have you. So we're getting started here. And actually, before I ask you guys any questions, I just want to give you a little introduction to today's webinar. So at the bottom of your screen, there's not a ton of us in here today, but that's okay because people will catch the replay. There is chat and there is Q&A. So that's what today's webinar will look like. We're going to have the main section here where we're presently watching slides, but in the near future, before too long, we will definitely be in the lightShark, and that will be most of our time together. So that is all great. And at the bottom, though, of your Zoom toolbar, you're going to see the chat and you're going to see the Q&A. And the biggest thing is, yeah, I know we don't have a ton of people in here today, but if you do have a question, go ahead and answer it in the Q&A for me. That just helps it so that things don't get lost in there. In the chat, things can get lost if people start chatting up a lot. I know there's not a lot of people in here, so it might not feel like it matters. But again, I don't want to miss your question. So if it is a question, pop it in the Q&A. If it's just a thanks or whatever, pop it in the chat. Here's what you need to do today. So we're going to be teaching the lightShark today, and I would appreciate it if you could remove any distractions you've got. That would mean, shutting that door, turning off that phone as I have, et cetera, so that you can focus fully on what we're doing today. Awesome. So let's dive in, guys. The lightShark. I recognize some of y'all's names, so I know some of you guys are familiar with the lightShark, but I'm curious. Let me know in the chat. Do you use the lightShark currently? And if so, are you an LS1 kind of person or an LS Core kind of person or a bit of both? Let me know. So the lightShark, for those who may not be familiar, if you're completely new to this, is a complete lighting console in a compact and portable hardware. It's got built-in Wi-Fi that can be controlled by any device. So what that means is that any platform you're on, you're able to control the lightShark as long as you have a web browser. It's just a web page. That's the cool thing about it. The other cool thing about it is that it's not like you're running a software on your tablet or your laptop or whatever you're using and then sending the DMX wirelessly, but you're just sending the look and feel of the buttons wirelessly. And then the DMX is all generated inside of the LS1 or the LS Core console. So no matter what happens, actually that's the next slide. No matter what happens to the Wi-Fi, to your network connection, it doesn't matter. DMX continues transmitting, lights are still on, and you can scramble around and figure out what went wrong and get back to your show. It is possible you can connect up to 3 devices. The limit's technically more than that, but we advise 3 simultaneously. And the cool thing about that is they all work with the control independently. So they all can have different windows open. They change between windows independently. And so it's not like you change the window on one and then, it switches on the other one. It's not like that. They're completely independent, which is awesome. You get complete independent control. As I mentioned, there is the LS1 here that Erwin's got, and Hector's got both, and that's great. It is the full console. It's got the 10 faders, lots of playback buttons, programming buttons, and a nice screen to show you what's going on, as well as the nice 4 encoder wheels and the place to stick your tablets. And we got the LS Core. It's just the box. Doesn't have all those fancy faders and buttons, but comes in at a great price, can fit into a 19-inch rack for installation with a little bracket or on a shelf, and is a great buy as well. Both of these guys run the same software. So that's what we're going to be using today. You dial in on your portable device, as we talked about, and you are in control. So with that, let's dive in. It's going to be a good day. So the first thing I like to do on these is give you guys a tour of the interface, a tour of what you see in the lightShark, because there's a lot in here. And, I like to get the most out of everything I use. So I'd love to show you everything that's in here. So the main screen here is the palette screen across the top. Notice we've got 4 or 5 screens we're going to get into here. And the palette screen has the groups and individual fixtures here in this quadrant up top. On the right, when we've selected an item, we now have the ability to get control of our different parameters by their groups: intensity, position, beam, advanced, gobo, color, and effects. All of these are on the right side. And then we're able to work with those to be able to create some really cool lighting. All right. Next, in the middle, we've got these programming keys that you just saw me using. And at the very bottom, we have a variety of playbacks. So there are 10 playbacks at the bottom. They match the playbacks on the LS1. But we can also swipe for more playbacks to control them, though that doesn't switch it on the LS1, so don't worry about that. And then we also have access to even more playbacks through pages. And when we do switch the page, that does switch the 10 on the LS1. All of these playbacks are also accessible on the virtual playback page. And so you're able to go ahead, see our 10 playbacks here, swipe over to 11 through 20, swipe over again, or use the 1, 2, 3 here to get to 21 through 30. What that's going to do for you is allow you to pop open my visualizer here because we might use it later. It allows you to go ahead and get that control of those extra faders, even if you don't have them physically. So one thing I see a lot of people do during live shows is they might have a tablet with just this screen up to use 10 faders that they don't have in the physical, whether that be because they're on an LS Core and these are, they're only faders, or maybe they're on an LS1 and they just, want those extra 10 faders, right? So either way, you get that control and you're good to go. The cue list window allows us to select any of our cue lists, see the individual cues within them, and do a variety of tasks there. All right. Then we have the executor screen, which is a bunch of buttons in a grid, which allow us to really quickly lay out a bunch of different lighting looks and then be able to fire them from our console. As we go vertically, they generally override. As we go horizontally, they're able to play back at the same time, though there now is in the software the ability to make it so that only one executor in the preferences is active at a time, and I can show that later if folks are interested. Last, we have the program output screen, which allows us to see what we've brought in our programmer. So if we had selected some lights and given them some kind of parameters here, we can then go over to our executor screen, And what we're going to see there is, or sorry, to our program output screen. And what we're going to see there is the values that we've brought into the programmer. We're able to see those, know what we're about to record into a queue, and monitor that as we work. Awesome. So that's the basics. As well as in the top here, there is the blind mode, which allows you to program in secret. So whatever you've brought into the programmer is not output to the stage while you are in blind mode. And then you click that back off and you're back to going live to the stage with whatever you've selected and worked with. All right. So let's go ahead real quick. So Erwin asked, I've got a quick question here, so I'm going to answer here. Erwin asked, can you access the different faders on the bottom of the LS1? So yes and no. So the pages, faders 1 through 10, are accessible on the LS1, no matter which page you're on. So page 1, page 2, page 3, that's always going to be on the faders of the LS1. Going horizontally, as I like to think of it, faders 11 through 20 and 21 through 30 are not going to be on the LS1. For that, you're going to want to add an LS Wing, a MIDI controller, or just a screen to be able to access those. Exactly. It's just, it's meant to be, the key here is making it so that design-wise, like, it's not super confusing to people, right? And so the idea is that, yes, you can change pages if you need to change the faders that are on the LS1, but going side to side with the 11 through 20 and 21 through 30 is kind of asking to get people really lost, dazed, and confused. And so that's why those work that way. But you should find that you're able to do what you need between switching pages and using the horizontal, 11 through 20, 21 through 30 on other devices, etc. Awesome. So let's go ahead and start from scratch. So the very first thing that we're going to do is go up here to our main 3-dot menu and create a new show. I'm going to start from scratch just so that we're all on the same page. Once you do create a new show, you'll want to save it. First things first, that's going to give it a name so that your show has a name. And so I'm just going to call this one Webinar December 2020. 2020 is almost over. And then we're good to go. Then the first thing we're going to do is go to the patch screen, okay? So the patch screen here is where we enter our lights, where we start to tell the lightShark what lights we have. And we do that through the Add Fixtures window. Here's where we decide what lights we're going to bring in. For this example, first I'm going to go to the brand and choose M for Martin. And then we find it here in the list. And we're going to go with the Viper Performance. So that is under V, I believe. Yes, it is. Viper Perf, P-E-R-F. And then we're going to run those guys in basic mode. All right. So what we do here, as you saw, the basics of this window is first you choose the light that you're going to patch. Then you choose, or first you choose, sorry, the brand of light that you're going to patch. Then you go ahead, you choose the model in this next section. Then last, you have the option of whatever modes that light may have. Last, you set the amount right here. And this is a good place to show you that in the lightShark, we can use these plus minus keys to enter a number, or if we hold down on it, we get this pop-up that allows you to type in a new number. As well, if you're on an LS1 console, there is the set button, which works the same. You press set, then press the field, such as this number right here, and then you get this same pop-up here. Awesome. So we're going to patch 8 of those guys, and we're just going to press patch. Boom. Once that's done, you get a happy success message that your patch is done, and then life's good. They're patched. Let's do another light here to show you the advanced capabilities. So next we're going to go and patch some generic fixtures under G. Now, generic fixtures are really helpful in a lot of situations. Like pretty much any time that you have an LED par or strip light or just kind of generic wash unit that, it may just be a 4-channel RGB-W or an RGB-A, or maybe just red, green, and blue, or, something similar to that where there's nothing super specific about it. The generic fixtures can work fine. You don't have to have a fixture profile that matches the name of the light if it just has some really basic channels like that. So in this case, we're going to go to generic and go to RGB, and we're going to do RGB AW. So RGB amber white. There it hides. And then we're going to put it in LTP mode. Now note, one question I do get a lot is I have dimmers. How do I patch those? And that would be, actually back a step, in one channel HTTP mode would be my recommendation there. I believe there is also one called dimmer, which will work as well. There's many options, but that'll allow you to patch your dimmers. You patch as many of these as you have dimmers. So if it's a 48 channel dimmer rack, you patch 48. Back to our RGB AW though. So we're there, we're choosing LTP. Now let's toggle this advanced. Okay. When it says advanced, this allows us to patch our lights out of order. So if we don't have this on, the lightShark's just going to go ahead and it's going to patch at the first available address, your next fixture. Okay. And that works for a lot of situations, but it doesn't work for everything. So what you want to do is you can turn this on if you need to override that basic setting. For this example, I'm just going to change the start channel here to 300. We can also change the DMX universe, which changes where the DMX comes out of the console. So on the consoles themselves, there are 2 DMX universes with local DMX ports, and then the rest are available via SACN or are available via ArtNet. Here we also have offset, the last field. And what the offset is going to do is allow us to leave basically channel gaps, as we call it, between fixtures. So it would patch a fixture, and then an offset of 1 would leave a single channel open before the next fixture. And the only real reason to do this is when you walk into a venue and things are already patched, and maybe, for example, they alternated their fixtures in their patch. They did fixture 1, then 2, then 1, then 2, then 1, then 2, etc. And that kind of makes it a pain in the butt in most consoles to patch, but this will at least help you because you can go ahead and be able to, go ahead and put that gap in there, save yourself some time so that you don't have to patch each one individually. Awesome. We'll go ahead and patch this. Boom. Get the success message. We're off to the races. All right. So let's review our patch real quick. On the patched screen here, it's going to show us our patch. So this is where you can look at all of your lights. You can see the type. You can see their universe, where they're coming out of the console, and their address. And you're able to go ahead and enter all those numbers into your lights. You can also invert pan or tilt by pressing any of these, and or swap the pan and tilt. The VDIM column is for the virtual dimmer. So these lights, a lot of LED fixtures may not have a dimmer channel in the profile you use, such as the one we chose here today, but that's okay. But you still want that intensity control. You want the ability to go, okay, I just want to turn this light down overall with the dimmer, turn it back up, etc. So to get that control, the console can do the math for us, but we just need to click here for this VDIM. And by default, it's on. But if for some reason you would need it off, that's totally doable as well. The only times that I see people needing to turn this off typically is either you prefer to not have a dimmer on your LEDs, which is not the normative case, but it happens. But more often than not, it's if you have like a color mixing engine that's in front of another light that might be on a dimmer or something like that. Again, it's something with LEDs, we're seeing less and less need for this, but you still can turn it off if you need to. Awesome. Now that we've patched them, we will press exit and take any questions that you guys have on what we've covered so far. So I'll grab a quick sip of water. Let me know if you have any questions so far. I know there's just a few of us today, but that means that we can, answer the questions you have specifically. We're not going to run short on time. It's going to be a beautiful thing. So let me know if you got any questions, and we'll get going here. Awesome. Not seeing any questions come in. That's totally fine. One thing that I do like to go over here as well, just checking my notes here. This is what I noticed here is that I didn't go over the DMX settings in the menu, which is always good to do just because that then allows us, oops, I got to pop up somewhere, that then allows us to go ahead and cover that so you guys are aware of how to turn that stuff on, turn it off, etc. So here in our menu, and then into our preferences menu, we are able to go ahead and enable our DMX output under DMX setup. So if you're running the lightShark and you're just running, the basic ports where you're just running the ports on the back and you don't need anything fancier than that, then you probably don't need to mess with this. But if you need to run things over the network, then these settings are definitely going to be your friend. So by default, the output for DMX is enabled with SACN. So coming out of your network port, you've got streaming ACN coming out. Okay. You can switch that to ArtNet and press apply. And if you do enable either of these or switch, once you press apply, you will need to reboot, which we're not going to do right now. We also have the ability here to do a reduced output rate. Again, if you're having issue with fixtures flickering or something like that, that may help. Usually it's more the fixture than the console. But again, in a shows type situation, sometimes you just need something that works and that'll fix it for you. If you're not using ArtNet or SACN and you've got this plugged into a network, then you may want to turn that off and press apply just because you don't need it. Why send that extra information on the network? Speaking of setting up the network, our network setup tab here, the last one, allows you to set up a variety of things on the network. So your Ethernet, this gives you the IP address for control, which you can allow to be static or dynamic. You can set the DMX streaming IP address. So you set wherever you're sending the DMX to, whatever IP address you want to do that on, you can set that here, as well as the subnet mask. And then you have the ability for your wireless control as well, to change the name of the console's wireless network, to change the password, please do that. And then also to change the channel so that if you're running into a lot of interference, you're having trouble with your wireless devices dropping out, many times changing the channel can work better. And I did make a video not too long ago on the Work Pro TV YouTube channel that goes over just that. Awesome. So let's go ahead and record our first cue here. So when it comes to recording a cue in the lightShark, or really a lot of other consoles, there's a specific flow that we go through to get from an idea in your head to a actual cue. That's something where a cue is just where we play it back and it's on a button or a fader. We press it, we bring the fader up, it goes. Okay. So how do we get there? Well, the first thing we do is we create groups, and then we're able to use those groups or the ones that are pre-created by the console to select our lights. Once they're selected, we move to palettes. Now, palettes are just stored bits of information that pertain to a specific attribute of the light. So we're going to have palettes for intensity. We're going to have palettes for color, for position, pan, tilt. We're going to have palettes for beam, for gobos, etc. And then once we apply those palettes, which when we press the palette, only apply to the lights we have selected, that's important, we then can go ahead, press the old record button, and make a cue on a fader or on one of the executor buttons. And so what that's going to do is allow us at that point, once we've cleared, to press play on our fader or button and be able to get that playback to happen. So let's dive in. Nope, not questions time. Let's go and show you how to do it. So first things first, what we're going to do here is select just one group of our lights. Okay. So we can select a group of our lights here. And when we do that, we can see here that we have fixtures selected on the fixtures. If we press clear, it's going to clear that selection entirely. Let's build a new group. So I'm going to go and press lights 1, 3, 5, 7. And then I'm going to press record, go to groups, and make a new group. Now, to name this group, we can go ahead, and I'm just going to call it Half Viper. Boom, done and done. Then I'll press clear, and now I can go ahead and do that again and again and again. So this process is the same whether you're selecting maybe multiple groups. You could then press record, make a new group, call that all. Now that group has all of our lights in it. With groups, we also can move, copy, and delete them. Very helpful. So if we select a group, we're able to go ahead and copy and set where we want that to go. We get a copy of that group. Then you could go ahead and do with it as however you please. We can also move them. So we select it, press move, press where we want it to go. Then we move it. Deleting works very similarly, pressing delete, but we need to have it deselected first. Press delete, press that group, boom, it goes away. It goes away for good. So only do that if you mean it, because or else you're going to have a problem. You know, we don't want you to have problems. We want you to have a great day, right? So when it comes down to it, always remember with delete, it does really delete things most of the time, and so you won't get them back. Awesome. So now let's go ahead to palettes. Palettes are under each of these parameter groups at the top here of this right quadrant on the screen. Some of them, such as ones for gobos, are usually pre-made within the fixture profile. Same with colors, okay? If the profiles were created by WorkPro, if you do request those and get them created, you're going to be able to have these palettes to work with here, okay? For other attributes, though, like intensity, you're not going to have any palettes by default. So let's create some. First, I'm just going to select maybe just my Viper performances. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press find to get started here from the start. Because what find does that's a little bit different, and actually I'm going to bring my visualizer over here so you guys can really see what's going on. So when I press find, it does a couple things for me that are helpful, especially in the early stages of programming. So let me bring this visualizer over. So when I press find, what that does, I'll press clear now and then do it again. Select my lights and press find. What I get is it's going to turn the lights on. It's going to bring up the intensity, but also it's going to open up the shutter if the light has a shutter. It's going to take the position. It's going to point it straight down or straight up if it's a floor mounted fixture. And then it's going to clear everything else out of the light. So if there were gobos, colors, you know, whatever, if there was any of that going on, it's going to clear all that stuff out. All of that information is now in the programmer, okay? So if you go to record now, you do get a cue that has, if you record a cue that has intensity, pan, tilt, shutter, all the color stuff in it, okay? Gobos, framing shutters, you know, zoom, everything, okay? So this is where it's important to be careful. You can go and make a quick palette, and that's a good way to start. So like for an example, an intensity palette only contains things from the intensity parameter group here. So in that case, it's intensity and shutter. So if I press palettes and press record, press the first button, then I can give it a name. This palette here, if I clear and then select my lights and select that palette, only contains, if I go to my programmer, it only contains the intensity and shutter information, okay? It does not contain any of that other stuff because we went from the palette that we created that from find, which only has that information in it. Not only that, but you'll see if I clear and I deselect, that palette goes away. So only palettes that apply to the light you have selected will show up. So for example, if I grab these PARs, these RGBAWs, I bring them up to full, then I can go ahead and I can go to my palettes. I can record, boom, press there, give it a name. And now we see, if I clear that, it goes away. So I get my Vipers and I get my RGBs. If I select them together, I'll see both. But obviously, if you're following along here, only the Viper one applies to the Vipers. Only the RGB one only applies to the PARs. Okay. And so when we're talking about palettes, the biggest thing with palettes is that if they're from palettes you created, such as the intensity ones, the position ones, any gobo or color ones that you create, you're able to modify those later, okay? And when you modify those later, you now have the ability to update any cue that was created from that palette. So if you are using a position palette and you go and update that later, you change it, maybe it's a new show in a different venue, When you update that palette, all of the cues created from it, whether it was 2 cues or 100 cues, get updated at that point in time because they're listening to the palette for changes. So be careful when you're recording and be sure to use palettes a lot when you're making cues because it's going to make it so that you're able to make updates to things later very quickly. Not only that, but it gives you the consistency of, if I choose the at stage position palette, let's go make that. So I'll grab my parameters here. Say we just have a generic at stage, record that to a palette. Hold down to give it a name or press set. Then we go ahead and we can clear that. And anytime we go and we grab that palette, we'll also need to grab the Viper full. We see we've pointed in that exact position, okay? And anytime we use that same position in any other cue, as long as we build off the palette every time, it's going to be consistent. It's not going to look sloppy. It's going to be, the same thing every time. So those are palettes. The last part of this process of making your first cue is the cue part. So recording is just as simple as pressing record and then pressing a button. So we'll, select our lights. Maybe we take our Vipers to full and we do a color. Turn them red. We'll grab our RGBs, turn them white, and then we will take those guys to full. And then we record those and we press a fader. Now we've recorded that cue on a fader. If I press clear, it goes away. And if I bring that fader up, I'm on an LS1 so I can actually bring it up. You can see I get that look and I'm able to play it. If you're on a core or just on the screen, you can bring the fader up here. You can do it on the virtual playback page, etc. Lots of options there. You can press play on this button and it's going to play. What about recording to executors? Great question. So when we clear, first of all, we're going to clear everything that's in our programmer, and that's important because the lightShark is not a tracking console, which has its benefits, but you have to be aware of it. So if I go ahead and I just cleared after making this cue, if I go ahead and create a second cue where I just go make these Vipers green, it's Christmas. We went from red to green. Why not? We press record. We can then save that on this cue. But when I go to play this back, say I clear and play this cue back, wah, 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 there's nothing. Why is there nothing? Well, there isn't truly nothing, but all that recorded there, because I cleared, was the green. There's no intensity. There's no position, just green. So if you're recording a bunch of cues in a row, you want to go ahead and not clear till you're done making that whole cue list, because or else you'll get a cue that, like this one, doesn't have a lot in it, okay? Just has some color. While we're on that topic and while we're here in the cue list window, if you do need to edit cues as you're, bopping along, one quick and easy way to do it is to press these little arrows. And then you can hold down in any of these cells, basically it's like a spreadsheet, and modify any hard values, anything that's not a preset. If it's a preset and you change it though, just be aware, like this one, it now cuts it out of that preset. So you got to be careful about that, but that's a quick way to edit things. Really helpful. So just be careful when you do clear, because it can cause things to, be a little bit problematic there. If you thought you were going to get some intensity and you didn't, you'd have to go back in, add that in later. All right. Let's see. So let's talk about playback options or recording to an executor. Let's talk about that real quick first. Okay. So when it comes to the executors, they're really just as simple as making a look, that we'd like. Select our lights, bring these guys to full, pop in a gobo. Perfect. Now we'll go ahead, let's pop in a color too. And now we're going to record this. So now we'll go to the executors, and recording is just as simple as it was before. We'll just press edit. And then we can actually just press the plus here. No, we need to press record first, then we press the plus sign. What am I thinking? And then we've recorded something on the executors. I gave it a flashy name like that. That really didn't make any sense. And now maybe I'll go and record another executor. So this one, type it's amber and blue. Sure. Now we'll go ahead back to our executor screen, record a second one, and we're good to go. Give it a name. If I can type, we'll have a nice name. Now we're good to go. Once you're done recording executors, you can press clear, of course, get out of this edit mode, and you're able to view your executors. Perfect. Now, as I mentioned before, by default, just to show you, we can only play executors. They're going to override each other vertically, but they won't horizontally, okay? So say, for example, I bring in my initial cue list over here to the executors, and I can do that by pressing copy, pressing the initial cue, and then pressing where I want it to go in the executors. Okay, say I wanted to make it so that only one of these could fire at a time, so that these ones would not add together, but they would be independent. Well, that's actually really simple to do in the latest version of software. We can go here to our three-dot menu and to our preferences, to user preferences, and then, oh, sorry, show settings, sorry. And then executor mode is going to be exclusive. Yes, this is fancy, it's exclusive. Then press exit, and now only one of these will fire at a time, no matter which column it's in. So this is great for a lot of installations, right? Where maybe you'll give somebody access to the executors, like, you know, some non-technical staff, pastors, you know, bar owners, whoever. You can give them the access to play back things. They get, in a single executor page, 64 options. You can fill that up with different looks, and then, you know, let them be. You know, they can play one at a time. There's not going to be any problems with them trying to play two things at once and them looking funny. It's just going to play one at a time. Awesome. Let's talk quickly about the playback options. So when it comes to options on the playbacks, we can go ahead and tap right here in this number, which brings up this fader. And then we've got this three-dot menu that brings up our playback options. These give us a variety of things that can affect how the fader plays back. So by default, fader controls HTP channels is on. What this means in a nutshell is that intensity channels, which in the lightShark are the HTP channels, they go ahead and they are going to be controlled by the fader. So you bring the fader up and down, as I'll do here, and it's going to control the brightness of those intensity channels. You can turn that off, though, if you don't want it to control intensity with the fader. Next, we have fader controls LTP channels. What this does is it allows us to have the fader control the amount of the non-intensity channels. So that's going to include everything. Like you see here, as I bring this fader up and down, it gets kind of wonky where only the pars are in first and then the movers kind of pop in at the end. What that is that the shutter channel is on this fader, and it doesn't fade smoothly. It's not a 0 to 100 kind of control. So you can do a lot, though, with controlling colors, with controlling, you know, a gobo wheel, things like that on a fader. There's a lot of great stuff you can do with turning on fader controls LTP channels. But in general, you want to avoid putting things like shutter or strobe channels on that fader, unless you know that the way that your fixture works well with that. You know, it has a 0 to 100 control. Then we have our effects controls. So we can have the fader control the speed of the effect. We'll go over effects in a couple minutes. And also the size. You can do either or both. You can do all four of these. You can do none of these. Totally your choice. Next, we have our playback priority. A higher number means that the playback will take over, or not take over, but the playback will not be taken over by lower number playbacks. So by default, this is at 1. And if we switch a playback to 2 or anything higher, then any of the playbacks at the normal 1, if you try to play them while the higher number playback is active, it will not take over anything that playback is controlling. So this can be really helpful if there's something like a stage wash that you want to have ultimate control over, and you don't want that when it's up to be overridden by anything. Excuse me. Next, we have trigger. Trigger is just all about what happens when you move that fader. So Fader up and go and down and release means it starts and stops the cue when you bring the fader up and down. By default, this is on. But we can also have it start the cue automatically when you change a page. You can have it shut off when you change a page so it doesn't carry over. You can have it locked to all the pages. So again, if it's your main stage wash or something really important, then it's on every single page in the same spot. And it's just one little tick here, turn this on, and now it's locked to all the pages. You don't have to copy it between pages, etc. Then there's launch on load. So this is when the show file loads, boom, this starts up. And then trigger level is for the up and go and down and release. So that's saying, okay, when I get the fader to 1%, it's going to fire. So if you have issues, most people don't, but occasionally somebody just likes to play with the faders at the bottom or they bump them a little bit accidentally, and they might set the trigger level to 5 instead of 1, just to give them just a little bit more room or something like that. Again, it's not something a lot of people use, but it's there. It's useful to some. So there you go. We also have the cue list window, which is up here at the top, or if we double tap the header of this cue list, it's going to take us there as well. What's the cue list window? The cue list window is where you can modify the fade times and other things about your cues. So if I stop this cue list, I can go ahead, change the name of the cue, and also change the timings, crossfade, fade in, and fade out. So let's just say we set a fade in to 2 seconds, set a fade out to 2 seconds. Oops, I need to set the crossfade first. Sorry about that. So I'll set my crossfade first, and then I'll set my fade in, and then I'll set my fade out. Now, the one thing that trips people up about this sometimes, I'm just going to show this to you. We'll make the crossfade 3 on this one, and we'll make the fade in 1 second and the fade out, let's say 1 second. So the thing that can trick people up sometimes is that the crossfade actually deals with, and the fade in and fade out are all with the current line. So this is a little bit different than other consoles, where this fade out time, and as well as the crossfade, is actually from the fade of the cue previous to this one, or in this case, the second cue as it wraps around, okay, to restart. So don't let that confuse you. It makes a lot of sense. It's saying, okay, at the moment that I play this cue, it's going to crossfade from its previous cue over 2 seconds, and then its fade in time is 2 seconds as well as its fade out time. But you could modify that. You could make it fade out, a little bit faster. Maybe I set that to 1, okay? The big key here is that, the fade in and fade out cannot be higher than the crossfade time. So there, I tried to set my fade into 3. It said no. It set it back to 2. As I mentioned, you can edit things here as well in this window. And also, if you need to change the order, you can just click here, tap, hold in there, change the number. So maybe this becomes number 3. Now it's flopped. Now Q1, which was first, is now the second cue. And when we cycle back through, it will then fire the correct cue for us. Nice and simple. Awesome questions, guys. Let me know if you've got any questions at this part about groups, palettes, and cues. You guys have been a great audience thus far. And then we'll talk about effects for our last segment. And last after that, we will take any questions that you guys have regarding the lightShark. Literally ask me anything for, the last little bit here. We'll also probably cover editing cues a little bit. Why not? So let me know if you have any questions as I grab a little bit of water, and then we'll continue going. Hector says, all is calm, all is quiet. He is good. Cool. I'm guessing we're good. I'm not seeing any questions pop in, but I'll just give it a second. Awesome. No questions. Happy with it. Awesome, Jacobus. Or Jacobus. Oh, man, I'm going to kill your name. I'm sorry about that. Okay, good deal. So let's go ahead and move on to the last section. So effects. Effects in the lightShark, if you guys have been following anything at all, are the first thing I have to say is they're well overdue for an overhaul, and the team is working. Jacob, that's easy because we definitely have Jacob here. Jacob's my neighbor, actually. Um, but but effects are the one part in the lightShark that they're completely overhauling right now. From what I gather in talking to them, they're very close to it being finished. But as I've learned from working with manufacturers over the years, software development can be unpredictable, and there's a couple bugs they're working out right now. And once they have those squashed, we're going to see the new effects. So until then, let's work with what we've got here. Okay. So effects are found, first of all, in the palette screen at the bottom here. They're separated across the top in intensity, position, beam, and color. And when we select a particular light, we then have the ability to set up these effects. So let's go ahead with intensity. Actually, I like to start with position because it's a little easier to see. So we've got the options here to set an effect on pan, an effect on tilt. We switch to a color scheme we can see better. With a couple different waveforms, as well as these shapes in the case of pan tilt that give us effects on both pan and tilt together. So once you choose the effect that you like, I think I'm going to go with the tilt wave in this case. You then go ahead and can set basically the distribution of how the effect happens across the light. What this means is the pink line is basically the starting point or the 0 point of the effect. So it's usually the middle of the effect in that case. Okay. By default, this tilt effect starts by setting the tilt value high, then moves to the middle, then goes below the base point wherever the pan and tilt is starting. This one is only additive, so it only goes in a positive direction from where the light started. So in this case, that means that when I selected that, these lights aren't going back behind the stage at all. They're only on the stage and forward. This one is similar, but it goes in the opposite way as to how it starts and ends. And then this one is kind of funny because it starts the effect and then it swaps across from all the way positive to all the way negative and finishes out. Let's choose this shape. And then we have the ability to change the size, speed, and offset. So the size is how big the effect is, meaning how far off of that initial base point does this effect move? If you take it very small, you see the effect being very minor. If you take it big, it's going to use the full range of that light, and or if you're not in the middle of its range, you see there it kind of taps out. It hits the end of its range and then it stops for a second as the effect literally, in the console basically continues to go past the physical range of the speaker, the light. What are these things we're talking about? And then comes back. Okay, so that's the size. Then we've got the speed, pretty self-explanatory. That's how fast it goes, right? Drag that up fast, it's gonna move real quick. Slow it down, it's gonna move slow. Of course, with any light that's moving physically, parts of it, like these moving lights, if you set the speed above what it can do, it's going to make the size smaller effectively because it can only move so far in the given time. Last, we have offset. Offset is how far apart the different fixtures or how much apart the different fixtures operate. So near the middle is usually where I find I like it best. If you drag it all the way to 0, the lights all do the effect in sync, which usually is not the look you're going for. And as you move it up, as you can see, the lights become less and less in sync and more balanced or distributed across the entire effect. So you find what you like, press record. You can record it to a regular cue on a playback and executor. And then once we clear, we can bring that fader up and play it back. Now, we noticed earlier, and we talked about in the playback settings here, the effects speed and or size, which are really helpful. So if I turn on the effects speed and then reach over to this fader, what that means is if I bring this fader up just a little, the effect moves very slow. It still goes to its full range, but it moves very slowly. Okay, as I bring it up, it moves fast, but then I can bring it down and move slow. So you get a lot of control there. With size, it's similar. So if I switch this over to effect size, we now see, okay, when I have it real low, it happens at full speed, but it's a very small effect, meaning that the lights don't move a lot. Now I've slammed that fader up to full, and we get the full range, and we can get anywhere in between, which allows you to make a lot of interesting effects. Truth be told, for a lot of my effects, I turn on both speed and size, so that I have control of both of those, so that when it's nice and small and low, the faders, the effect happens small, it moves slowly. Maybe that's what I need for a slower song. But then if I need to kick it into high gear, boom, I just bring that fader up all the way. Now it's full size, full speed, all that goodness. Now let's build some other effects. So we can build effects with any parameter. So maybe I grab these RGB AWs and I go to a color. And then I do a nice RGB effect, which is just going to be like a rainbowy thing. Drag my size up all the way so I can see it really good. Set that offset. Yeah, so there we have a nice little rainbowy thing. And maybe I grab the movers too. We'll do a CMY on this one, or maybe we'll just do the magenta flick. No, let's try the yellow flick. Drag that up. See the effect of it happening. Yeah. It's hard to see what's going on, but the magenta flick works pretty well. Change that offset, slow it back down. Whoops. Till you get something you like. Record that to a fader. And now you have a few effects to throw together. So if I turn on my speed and size on this one, I can now clear this guy out. Go to my virtual playbacks and mix these effects together. So now we can do color. We can do color and movement. We can do just movement. And so we can really start to lay out, as we have multiple faders, some really interesting effects. And as I mentioned, guys, the effects, it's somewhat limited in its current state, and we all know that. But it can still do some good stuff. And, look forward to the future. Very soon, we should be seeing the new effects. I don't have a date, but it's going to help a lot. All right. So a couple last things here before we open the floor up for questions is file management. So when you're programming, if you're programming like today's webinar just for fun, sure, don't worry about saving too much. But when it comes to doing real shows and stuff, you want to save and save often, right? That's what I'm a big fan of, is press save, hit that OK. You're good to go. If you want to create a new file, change the name so that you have older files that as you've been going, just change the name. Maybe we call it, I like to put the date and time on it, right? So 12/18/2020, 11/51, something like that. It does also put the time and date in the file, so that's part of it as well. And as long as your clock is set right in the console, that time and date is accurate. If the clock in the console is not right, then you're kind of out of luck. But then once we've saved, we also want to save it and back it up to a USB drive. So if we go here to File Manager, then we can go and plug in a USB drive. So let me do that real quick. Once you plug in a USB drive, in just a second, it's going to show up. You see USB showed up here at the top. And then we're able to save and load from USB. So to go send a file that we worked on to USB, we just press Export, press the file, get the success message, good to go. Now it's over here. That was called Julian Testius. I have a billion files on this one. You could scroll through these to find more. If I wanted to bring that file into the console from a different console, then I can go import, press that unit, boom, it imports successfully. Can you use a USB hub for a MIDI controller and a USB stick? Yeah, I think you can. I believe I have tested that and it does work just fine. Yeah, I think so. So yeah, absolutely, Erwin. Yeah, so that's importing and exporting. You'll see here that we have different colored files, and these are different types of files. Whoops, I just hit refresh, but that's okay because we're in the lightShark. So that means it's just a web page. So back to our file manager. You'll see here that I have all sorts of different colored files. Some of these are software updates, these orange ones. And we can open those by pressing open, pressing the file, then confirming, and then we get a cycle of reboots and whatnot as it applies that. Fixture packages, you can download those from workpro.es/lightshark to get all the latest fixtures. So if you got new stuff and it's not in there, check the fixture package. You bring those in USB, you press import, you press the fixture package. It's going to take a minute, and then it's going to let you know, hey, everything's good. We got that imported for you, David, or Erwin, or Hector, or Jacob. We got that imported. Now, they do take a minute, and then you get this success message, and you're off to the races. Awesome. So now, guys, we are hitting the end of the webinar. What are you guys looking, what questions do you guys have? Because I am open to answering whatever questions you've got for the rest of the webinar, and then we'll all head off on our merry way and enjoy the rest of our days. So let me know in the question section. Glad to answer anything really about the lightShark. We can boot up the LS Wing if you have any questions about that and the configuration, or if you just want to hear me stop rambling on, then that's okay too. That's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but no worries. Let me know in the questions what questions you've got. While you do that, just go over a couple last few slides about where to find support. So Hector, you're waiting for your wing. Where are you in the world? I'm just curious, because in the US, I think we have them in stock, but you might not be in the US. So where to get support? Probably the primary place is the lightShark Users Group official on Facebook. All right. And so the lightShark Users Group is just a place to share what you're doing and ask more basic questions. If what you're asking does become more of a support issue, we'll have you email in with more info. But it's a great place if you haven't joined lightShark Users Group official. Great place to hang out, and probably where you heard about this webinar, but maybe not. Then on YouTube, there is the WorkPro TV channel. On this channel, there are a ton of videos. These guys are really great about investing in making videos, and so every month they have me make new videos for this channel where we talk about like pretty much everything in the lightShark. We cover it all there, how to use it with other consoles, how to trigger it, use different parts of the console, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot in there, and usually if you have a question, you can probably find what you're looking for. Next, we have the LS Cloud. So at workpro.es/lightshark, there is a section of the site called the LS Cloud, where if you're not in front of your console, you can look at the fixture package. You can request fixtures there. You can request on the user voice page features that you'd want to know about. Jacob, for example, asked, what about fade in and out times on executors? And that's a great question because right now those aren't supported, but you could go to user voice there, see if anybody has put that in there. They probably have, and you can upvote it so that the developers pay attention to that. And then last but not least, the replay. I will upload the replay to the WorkPro TV YouTube channel. It won't be public, but I'll post about it in the Facebook users group later today once it's ready, as long as this recorded. No, it did record. Good deal. And so absolutely, guys, that is it. So Hector says I'm from Mexico. So yeah, Hector, I don't know why you're waiting for it because I don't work with Goner, who I believe, yeah, they're the distributor, right, Mexico. But, reach out to your dealer, whoever, see what's going on with that. I know we have them in stock in the US, so there's not like a shortage on them or anything, but maybe they're just out of them for the minute. So how do you program a fade time on the executors? So Erwin, Jacob was just asking the same thing. I don't think you can, but I'm always open to making sure they haven't changed anything. So I'm just going to go to my queue list view, click that executor, amber blue, and then I'm going to set a time on it. I'll just set a fade time of 5. Oh, I do need to stop it first. Whoops. Go to my queue list view here, check real quick to make sure this doesn't work. So yeah, it's got the 5-second crossfade. Set the fade in at 5 seconds just so it's painfully obvious if it's fading or not. I don't think it works though. Oh, I'm sorry. It does work. See? Nice long fade time there. So yeah, you can program a fade time on the executors. I forgot about. See, you remember new things. As some of you guys know, I know Erwin. I think you're one of my students. I cover, oh gosh, 6 or 7 lighting consoles, and I'm always up on them. And so sometimes you go, wait, can you do that? Yes, you can. So yeah, you just go to the cue list window. This one, for example, says it's on, executor one. This one says it's on executor row one as well. This one says it's on executor row two. You're able to find that. And then you just go enter the fade in and fade out times just like any other cue. I thought that was the way. I'm sorry. My brain did not work there. That's what happens when you have a baby in the house. I guess, no, not really. So yeah, any other questions, guys? And we'll stumble our way through them and answer them. Oh man, that's so terrible. But happy to answer your questions here in the last few minutes. Awesome, folks. Well, thank you for hanging out today. If you have any more questions in like the next minute, then enter them quickly. If not, we'll get rolling. Thank you guys for hanging out today. It's been a lot of fun teaching you. I hope you guys learned something new today, found something new that you can do with the lightShark to make your shows better. Because ultimately, that's why we do these things, right? To make things the best that we can in your shows, help you use the lightShark to its full capabilities. So, with that, thanks a lot, guys, for hanging out today, and we'll see you around the web. Great to have you. Thanks. Somebody asked, okay, how to get into the Facebook user group? No invitation. Just go to the lightShark Facebook users group. It looks like this. And I think there's a little thing that asks if you're a spammer. No, it just asks. It just asks if you've used the lightShark. It's just to keep spammers out. Just a couple quick questions, and then we let you in. So yeah, no special link. It's totally public. Lightshark users group official will get you there. Absolutely.